Welcome to this explainer. Okay, think for a second about who actually controls the hidden infrastructure that makes your modern life possible. Today, we're diving straight into a massive market reality that just recently hit, and we'll be unpacking a really fascinating analysis by Dr. Sofia Alvarez from the Billionaire Room. We are looking at SpaceX's historic public offering, and honestly, more importantly, what this milestone signals about a fundamental shift in global power. We're talking about the rise of the corporate superpower. Let's kick things off with just the sheer magnitude of this event, $75 billion. That is the exact amount raised by SpaceX on June 12, 2026. And to put that into perspective, this isn't just a big number for the quarter or the year. It represents the absolute largest initial public offering in the entire history of capital markets. A private transaction of this kind of staggering scale was once thought of as science fiction, or at best some distant future possibility. But it is now an undeniable market reality. And it's totally reshaping how we think about scale. Because of that insane demand, the success of this offering assigned the enterprise a valuation of $1.75 trillion. That instantly places the company among the most valuable publicly traded entities in the world. And to wrap your head around that, $1.75 trillion is actually larger than the entire gross domestic product of countries like Spain or Australia. The reporting showed that investor demand just massively exceeded expectations here. People weren't just buying stock, they were aggressively clamoring for exposure to Elon Musk's broader interconnected technology ecosystem. Which brings up the trillion-dollar question. Why are investors paying sovereign-scale money for a rocket company? Sure, space infrastructure and launch capabilities are undeniably exciting, but rockets alone absolutely do not explain this kind of unprecedented demand. It's actually kind of wild to think about private capital actively funding what is essentially sovereign-level defense and space technology. So the really crucial point here is figuring out what this insatiable demand actually reveals about the future structure of global power. Section 1. The end of the traditional boundary. To really get this shift, we have to recognize how the historical boundary between governments and private industry is basically disappearing right before our eyes. For most of modern economic history, call it the old world, governments were really the only ones with the capital and the mandate to build strategic infrastructure. Think about the construction of the Hoover Dam, or the massive undertaking of the interstate highway system. Corporations, meanwhile, focused on building commercial, consumer products. But in the new world, trillion-dollar capital markets are actively assigning those foundational, strategic functions directly to private enterprises instead of nation-states. Now we literally have private companies independently launching entire global satellite constellations. Section 2. Valuing platforms over products. This paradigm shift completely alters how the market calculates worth. Traditional valuation models deeply struggle to explain trillion-dollar outcomes like this, which is exactly why investors are thinking far beyond just rockets and launch activity. SpaceX sits right at the intersection of some incredibly vital sectors: space transportation, satellite communications, artificial intelligence infrastructure, national defense and security systems, global connectivity, and vital data transmission networks. Investors aren't valuing a single product anymore. They are rewarding control of an entire platform. They recognize that these sectors continuously feed into one another. It's like a giant flywheel. Satellite communications generate massive data pipelines, which train and sustain AI infrastructure, which in turn becomes a cornerstone for national defense. They are valuing the reality that one company has essentially become the foundational layer of the future digital economy. Section 3. The government challenge. So think about it. What does a government actually do when a single corporation owns the sky and the digital infrastructure beneath it? And keep in mind, the question of whether private capital can fund this has already been answered. They can, and they are. The whole strategic equation has shifted completely. Economic competitiveness, communications resilience, and deeply critical aspects of national security are now inextricably linked to decisions made in corporate boardrooms rather than government ministries. Imagine the realization a government official faces knowing a single corporate CEO essentially holds the keys to their nation's emergency communications resilience. For countries that rely on externally controlled technology systems, they are suddenly facing a massive, unprecedented new policy challenge. To navigate this, governments can't just sit back and dictate terms anymore. They have to proactively adapt to play 4 critical roles simultaneously. They must become a sophisticated partner, meaning they have to co-develop long-term strategies rather than just issue demands. They need to be a smart regulator, setting guardrails that protect the public without completely stifling rapid innovation. They have to act as an active investor, deliberately deploying sovereign wealth to co-fund these massive ventures. And finally, they must be a willing customer, guaranteeing baseline demand to help these foundational platforms scale. The countries that adapted these 4 roles the fastest, those are the ones that will secure their strategic future. Section 4. The opportunity for Africa. Now, this global shift extends far beyond the space sector. It offers a profound, timely lesson for emerging markets everywhere, particularly African economies looking to position themselves in this new era. The rise of companies like SpaceX proves that capital increasingly flows toward ambitious, infrastructure-led innovation rather than safe, incremental business models. Africa possesses massive opportunities to scale globally relevant enterprises across specific sectors like energy infrastructure, digital connectivity, advanced manufacturing, satellite services, logistics, and AI. And what's really incredible here is the leapfrog concept. Emerging markets don't necessarily have to dismantle deeply entrenched legacy systems. They have the unique chance to build a future from scratch, using this exact model of corporate-led infrastructure. But grabbing that opportunity requires a pretty radical shift in perspective. African policymakers must focus on building companies that actually own these critical infrastructure layers right from the ground up. They cannot simply view technology as just another consumer market to sell into. There's a fundamental difference between passively consuming apps on a smartphone and doing the hard physical work of laying the digital and physical pipelines that those apps run on. The core challenge is purposefully creating the investment environments capable of scaling these infrastructure layers, actively participating in the corporate superpower era rather than just sitting back and observing it. Section 5. The corporate superpower era. Because when you really look at it, that $75 billion share price of the IPO, that isn't the actual story. It is merely the signal of a much, much larger trend. We are looking at a fundamental tug-of-war that's defining the coming era. On one side, we have nations seeking traditional geopolitical influence. On the other, we have powerful corporations building borderless transnational infrastructure. The winners of the coming decade won't necessarily be the nations with the biggest populations or the largest traditional economies. The ultimate winners will be those who successfully align capital, technology, regulation, and execution around globally significant corporate platforms. Which brings us to a really powerful quote from Dr. Sofia Alvarez's analysis. She notes, SpaceX's IPO may ultimately be remembered not as a financial milestone, but as a defining moment in the emergence of the corporate superpower era. This just perfectly summarizes the profound paradigm shift we are witnessing right now. Capital markets are completely willing to assign sovereign-scale valuations to companies controlling strategic infrastructure, and that trend is only accelerating. This isn't just about space, folks. It's about the blueprint for how human civilization operates moving forward. So, I'm going to leave you with the ultimate question. When corporations build the critical infrastructure that transcends national boundaries, who truly governs the future? Think about the essential services you rely on every single day, and ask yourself who really holds the levers of power over that infrastructure. I'll leave you to ponder that as we wrap up today's explainer on the true cost and power of the modern infrastructure layer. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this massive shift, and I'll see you in the next explainer.